So after the test, you can see what's left. In the meantime, we lost a little more gypsum board off the ceiling. And obviously, the temperature between the gypsum board and the ceiling might have been somewhat higher in this area, where a piece of the gypsum of the face layer fell off during the test. But you know, you will see on the next few slides that the room was pretty much intact, or the ceiling was pretty much intact. So this is it. You look at the ceiling, NLT ceiling, there's really no charring anywhere. But we did have some charring on the walls in this location here, where the armoire was, and then in this location where one of the bookcases was located. And then in front, where the heaviest bookcase was, there we had the maximum damage, but the chart depth did not exceed 1/4 of an inch here. So let's move on to the second test. The second test was very similar to the first test in terms of fire growth. The heat release rate was apparently a little lower, reached approximately 5 megawatts. It lasted a little bit longer. And this test was terminated after 2 hours and 15 minutes. And I'll just show you a few pictures of the fire growth. So this is 1 minute from ignition. You can see that this is pretty benign. You would easily put this out if you wanted to, but you know, 3 minutes later you're like this. So you don't really have a lot of time to escape from these types of fires. I should say that we looked at the foam, the polyurethane foam in the furniture, and we basically put polyurethane foam in there that was not treated with fire retardants and that had a relatively high density. And that may not be exactly what you would have in your home, but it's sort of at the high end, I suppose. And then at 8 minutes, we have as you can see, we're starting to build up smoke in the lab, and that kind of lasted for another 10-15 minutes. We had the same thing as in the first test, where our bookcase, our heavy bookcase close to the doorway was burning for a long time. And then we I have another picture here when we terminated the test. So again, we have a bookcase in the back that's still burning, a little bit of the TV stand here, and then there's another bookcase behind the wall here in the back, an armoire, or what's left of it. So that also kept burning for quite some time. So the temperatures here look very similar to the first test. Again, we reached a peak temperature of about 1200 degrees C, 2200 F. And so the comparison with ASTM E119 is very similar. Again, looking at the ceiling temperatures, we have it's somewhat similar, although the temperature between the CL2 in this case and the base layer of gypsum did not increase very rapidly, not as quickly as in the previous test. And also the peak temperature was somewhat lower. In the previous test we reached 250, here it was probably around 230 degrees C or so. So this is what the room looks like after the second test was terminated and we removed the contents. Again, we had a little bit of gypsum board fall off the ceiling in the same area as the same area here as in the first test. And then when you remove all the gypsum board, you can see that as in the first test, we had some charring where there was a bookcase and things continued to burn for some time. Although the char depth was very minimal here, less than in the first test. This is, I think it's the last slide. We did not have any penetrations in this test, but we did have our plate thermometers, as I mentioned before, and they were mounted on a pipe, the thermocouple that in the plate thermometer goes through a pipe, a steel pipe that penetrated a wall. So you can see where that was. I think this is the back wall. You can see the amount of charring that took place where that pipe penetrates the wall. To conclude, so this concludes the presentation of the experiments that we conducted, but Kuma asked me to also show you a few slides of standard testing that was performed. There was an ASTM E119 test that was done on the same type of CLT panel, 5-ply, approximately 7 inches thick. In this case, it was protected with only one layer of Type X gypsum board on each side, and the objective was to obtain a 2-hour rating. And it was very successful and resulted actually in more than 3 hours. 3 hours until structural failure occurred and there was flaming on the unexposed side. So, and this test report is, you can see the URL here. It's available from this this link. So the same system with one layer of gypsum board performs very well in an ASTM E119 test. What we tested in the room was a 2 or wood system that was protected with 2 layers of 5/8 Type X gypsum board.